vaccine. So I want to spend some time talking about that and like the science and the research behind it. And I really want to give a lot of credit to the scientists and the lab workers, the lab researchers, the assistants, everybody that's been, a part of making this happen. Um, and I really want to give them a lot of credit and, how fast they were able to develop the vaccine. Um, so, well, first, my story. On December 24th, I was exposed to a patient. I also do some home therapy here in California. So I had to see a case who had a broken femur. So his thigh bone was broken and he was just discharged from a nursing home to his home. And he had tested negative for COVID. So the protocol is everybody that's discharged from the hospital or nursing home, when they go home, they have to get a COVID test. And only if they're negative are they able to get services like physical therapy, nursing, a home health aid, things like that. So he tested negative. So I went to go see him on the 24th. And he's somebody that I felt like needed me to be there in person just to teach him how to get from his bed to a wheelchair, just so he can get around his home, or his son can like push him around his home so he wouldn't be stuck in bed for the whole holiday time, right? I was working with him. I had my mask, my face shield, my gloves, was wiping everything down. My session was maybe like 40, 45 minutes. And part of the session, I had to help him get from his wheelchair back into his bed because he wasn't strong enough to lift himself up safely. And I felt fine, went home, showered. My usual routine is after I go see patients in the field, I come home, I shower, take all my clothes off, shower. And only then will I'll, go into the rest of my home. So did everything, had, spent Christmas with my wife, my sister-in-law, brother-in-law. They live right here. We lived with them over the summer, so we were really close like that. And then on the 26th, so 2 days later, the patient's son calls me and he says, "Hey, my father just tested positive for COVID. You should get tested right now." So I felt fine. At this point, I had no symptoms, didn't even know anything was wrong. I wasn't really expecting anything wrong because he had the initial test that was negative. And then the next day, the 27th, I went to go get tested at a drive-through facility. So I get tested, and then on the 28th in the evening, 29th, I get the results back that I was positive. And the interesting thing is, like, I was like, after I got tested, that whole day I was having a lot of symptoms. So I had, first of all, like I had a slight fever. It was like 100.4. I had really bad body aches. This was my main symptom, like my whole back from my shoulders down to my hips. It was hurting so much. And anytime even if I was sleeping on my side, my back would hurt. If I was sleeping on my back, like my hips would hurt. If I was sleeping on my stomach, it was just like a very uncomfortable and painful position. And I was so tired. Like that night, I probably slept like 12 hours. And up until now, like I still feel like the fatigue is like my main symptom still. But luckily I didn't have any of the other common symptoms, which is like shortness of breath, really low oxygen levels in your body. You can see like blueness around your lips sometimes. Some of the other common symptoms like loss of smell, loss of taste. I don't really feel that. I can still taste everything just fine. But the main symptoms that I had were, slight fever for a day, but it got better by Monday and Tuesday. And then body aches were my main symptom. And it depends on where you're going and what part of town you're in. But a lot of people that have COVID in like same communities have very similar symptoms. So from my company, actually, there's been a few therapists that have tested positive for COVID. And they've all had like similar episodes, some better, some worse. And luckily I was in the pretty mild category. So like now what do? I've tested positive, right? So like what's the next step? Well, the next thing that you have to do is call everyone you know that you've seen in the last 4 or 5 days and tell them that, hey, I tested positive. I need you to get tested right away so we know if you're okay or not. But either way, even if they test negative, they still have to quarantine. Okay. So for me, I had to call my brother-in-law, sister-in-law. I had to call a few patients, and I had to tell them, hey, like I just tested positive for COVID. You need to get tested right away because I spent some time with you. My wife had to get tested, and luckily, like everybody that I was surrounding myself with, they all tested negative, so that was really lucky. But I think it's very important to know in this situation how quickly it can spread. I was with the patient for maybe 40 minutes, and only maybe like 5 minutes did I even touch him. I had my mask, my face shield, gloves, wiped everything down, went home, took my clothes off, showered, and I still got COVID, even with all of these precautions. But the lucky side of this is, like we've been really good about hand washing and stuff when we're together now. So luckily, like the rest of my family did not get COVID, and luckily none of my other patients also got COVID. But this is something that I wouldn't have necessarily have known to get checked out if my patient's son didn't tell me. And I think this is the important thing, that a lot of times, we wait until somebody tells us to get tested, and then you get tested. But then by then you might have already seen 10 people, you might have already seen, and those 10 people might have seen another 10 people. And that's how it spreads really quickly. So if there's one piece of advice that I can offer with COVID, well, two pieces of advice. Number one, just get really, really, really practice washing your hands as much as possible. And washing your hands with soap and water is better than using hand sanitizer to kill any kind of virus that you have. Excuse me. And then the next thing that I think it's very important that unfortunately, sorry, that isn't talked about so much is how important it is to get tested, so and your circle and your community knows if they have been exposed. I usually get tested every week because I do see patients in person sometimes here. So I get tested every week, and I think it's important for our communities also to make sure we're getting tested so we can quicker isolate and quicker quarantine. But so like that's my experience. And then since I got tested on Sunday, I had my fever, my body aches. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I still had some body aches, but I was feeling better every day. Thursday and Friday this week, I started developing like a little bit of like a post nasal drip, some throat soreness, so a little bit of like sneezing and coughing. That happened like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it's getting a little bit better now, but it's still there. Clearly, you can hear me. My voice is a little different. It's a little bit more nasally. So overall, my symptoms are very mild, luckily, right? But that doesn't mean that when I spread it to somebody else, it's going to be mild for them also. It could be bad for them, and I don't know, and I don't want to take that risk with anybody. So like that's my experience with COVID, and I still have to quarantine until the end of the week. Excuse me. So like my final day of quarantining is January 10th. That's my official quarantine time. So like the first 2 weeks is when you're really contagious and infectious. And after that, there's a really low chance that I can spread it to other people. But I still need to wear all my precautions. So I still need to wear a mask. I still need to wear a face shield. I need to use gloves when I'm touching or working with people. I still need to limit my outings and limit my social gatherings just so I'm not unnecessarily risking anything. And those are still important steps I need to take going onward. Now, like there's been some really good scientific advancements that have happened and how quickly it's happened. So the vaccine, I know a lot of people here have heard, good things, bad things about the vaccine. And one very unique thing about this vaccine, it's different than any other vaccine that's ever been produced or distributed in the history of the world, right? So the traditional vaccines that we've all gotten before, like a flu vaccine, like polio, like measles, mumps, rubella, all of those regular vaccines you get, they're excuse me. So they're all created when you take a certain part of a virus and you weaken it a lot. And then once it's really, really weak or inactive, then they use that to inject into humans so we can get an immune response to it. Or there's like a weakened, it's not really weakened, it's like it's an inactive or a killed or a really damaged virus or a part of a virus that is then injected into us. So now the only way that you can, create enough of these vaccines for everybody in the world to get is that you need to keep on growing these vaccines. You have to keep on growing the virus. And that the time that it takes to grow from one virus to 2 viruses to 10 viruses to 1,000 viruses to 1,000,000 viruses to 1,000,000,000 viruses, and then weaken it. The weakening process isn't something you just, like you press a button and it becomes weaker. There's like a whole like physical process that goes into like, you take like these, you grow some of these viruses in like eggs, and then the eggs you have to like kind of beat and whip and like kind of like take them through different machines, and then the virus is weakened, and then they take that weakened virus and they have to test it, and then from testing it, then they have to figure out how to best store it, and then they have to figure out how to best distribute it. So this process for normal vaccines just takes so long because of two main reasons. They have to grow the viruses themselves, because they can't just take one virus and create 1,000 vaccines from it. They have to grow 1,000 viruses and then weaken it and then distribute it. So like that's one thing that takes a long time, just growing, because you need eggs, like, and one like virus, one vaccine like goes into like one egg. And like, I'm not even joking, like there's farms with eggs that are grown just for vaccine production. Okay. So that's one thing that's very common about all these traditional vaccines, and even the flu vaccine you get right now. Most likely it's grown this way. Like they take a flu, they literally grow it and incubate it, and they weaken it, and they test it, and they distribute it. So that process can take years if you're trying to create a vaccine for like 1 billion people or 2 billion people or 7 billion people, right? But the unique thing about the two vaccines that have been distributed right now for COVID, like the Moderna virus vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, are that they're both done with different technology. So they're not using the actual virus to create the vaccine. They've, like, very early on, like in December and January, they were able to find the whole virus's genome. And then they were able to pinpoint that the spike protein, which is on the outer part of the virus, there's like spikes on the outside part of the virus. And that spike protein is what is used to connect that virus to our cells, right? And then from our cells, the virus can then multiply and then spread into our body. So what they did was they identified that this spike protein is the most important thing to stop the spread of COVID. So what then these two major companies did, and a lot of other companies are working with right now, are trying to figure out what to do, is how can we create an immune system response to just that one little spike protein? Because if we can just destroy that protein on the virus, then it can't connect to our cells and then use our cells nucleus to create more viruses in our body. So I think that's the important thing that's really interesting, is like for any of these vaccines right now, that what's called the mRNA vaccine, they don't use the virus, they just use one little part of the virus, which is a protein. And then they're using that protein, and those proteins, if you have like the gene structure, and if you have like the protein structure of that that specific part of the virus, then they can just send it to a factory and produce like thousands of it. They don't need the whole virus, they just need that one part of the virus, that one protein of the virus. And that protein is common in other viruses as well. So then from that protein, then they can create a vaccine that can create an immune system response to just destroy that one part of the virus. And then from there, they found that, it was like 94% effective in the Pfizer vaccine. It was like 94.5% effective in the Moderna vaccine, in the sense that there was that percent, 94.5% less of a spread of infection if they were vaccinated with this mRNA vaccine. And that sounds like a high number, but when you realize that like a good vaccine like needs to be like, 50, 60, 70% effective at stopping the spread, and that's a good vaccine. So if these are 94.5% effective, it's much better and it's much more accurate, much more effective at stopping the spread than other vaccines already in history have been able to do. So I think like this is like a really amazing thing that scientists and researchers were able to create. And a company like Moderna has been working on this mRNA technology for over 10 years. And over 10 years, they haven't been able to make one successful vaccine until now. And the other very unique thing about our current environment is there was a massive influx of funding. And a lot of things in biotechnologies, they don't happen because there just isn't enough money to support it, to support the research, to support the testing. The testing is so expensive. So all these things are making it hard for biotechnology companies to create effective vaccines. And for this, like a lot of companies like Moderna was able to get like around $1.6 billion from the US government to help test the vaccine, to help. They even have orders. So like part of it is, okay, if everything is going good in phase 3 trials, then we'll buy these vaccines from you so we can distribute to our citizens. So they had the money, the technology timing was good. And also it's a new piece of technology that they were able to replicate the protein very quickly. And for the vaccines, the 2 vaccines that are on the market right now, that a lot of doctors, healthcare workers, people with pre-existing conditions, if you're a nursing home resident, you're on that high tier right now, you're able to take it. I think it's one of those things that it's one of these amazing things that has happened in our lifetime that has never happened before. We think that, creating computers was incredible, creating iPhones was incredible, but creating this vaccine is just as revolutionary for medicine and medical advancements as the iPhone was for cell phone technology. It's like that equivalent of a jump up, right? Before iPhones were a thing, like, cell phone technology was a flip phone, right? Not really that high tech. And then the iPhone happened and it was a massive upgrade. Like that's the equivalent to this vaccine. It's that much of an upgrade to any other way that vaccines have been developed now. And I think it's one of those things that I think we really need to find. If you know any researchers, say thank you. If you know anybody that's been working with these clinical trials, a lot of hospitals have been signing people up and checking them, testing them. And, so we really owe it to them for helping us get back to normal life as fast as possible. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about today, the vaccine. And after this, like, I know a lot of people will have questions. Please ask me any questions you have. I know right now that there is a lot of, misinformation being spread. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of things that are unclear right now. So just ask me the questions. If I know the answer, I can tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'll write them down and I'll hopefully find a more credible solution than what you can find on WhatsApp. And we can figure out a way to distribute this information later. Okay. So now, like, we've talked a little bit about, COVID, getting COVID and the vaccines. I think it's important for all of us to know that COVID, it's a respiratory virus. So it affects our breathing system. And the most important part of our breathing system is our lungs. And if you've had any lung conditions like pulmonary fibrosis, asthma, if you've had like a lung cancer, emphysema, COPD, anything like that, you know how hard it is to live when you can't breathe properly, right? We don't have to think about it every day. We don't have to like consciously take deep breaths. We just do it normally and we can live perfectly fine. And that's how it should be. But if you have a respiratory condition, if you have a respiratory condition, every breath you take can be very difficult. Luckily for me, I didn't experience any respiratory symptoms. I didn't have any oxygen issues. But I know a lot of patients who've had, and I know a lot of people who have other lung conditions outside of COVID that would benefit from learning a few strategies or learning a few tips on how to breathe a little bit better. And one of the things that they've learned early on from experience, like back in March and April, that people who have COVID and they were in hospitals or in ventilators and had really difficult time breathing, if they changed the position they were sleeping in, that their oxygen numbers recovered. And I think this is a very important thing that I want to show you guys and explain to you why that is. So everybody right now. Excuse me. So everybody right now, just put your hands on your chest, right? And just take a deep breath. So put your hands and kind of press in a little bit. So when you press a little bit, you can feel your lungs are expanding, okay? So this is me when I'm doing it in a standing position. So when I'm doing it in a standing position, my lungs can expand forward, they can expand sideways, and they can expand backwards. So my lungs can expand in 3 different directions when I'm standing like this, okay? But if you're in a hospital or if you're really sick, what's the position that you're in all the time? You're sleeping on your back, right? So you're usually just in a recliner, you know, you're up. Okay. So you're usually in a recliner or your legs are up and you're kind of leaning back. But like this is usually the position you are in when you're sick or you're sleeping so much. So what happens is right now my lungs can only really expand forward. They can't expand backwards because my back is fixated on the bed, right? They can expand a little bit to the sides, but not that much because I'm not moving so much. So because the only part of my lungs that are really moving is really just here when I'm sleeping like this, okay? So what they found in the hospitals from a lot of their experience was that if patients, they put them on their stomach for a couple hours, then now this back of their body can expand also. So what's happening from that is like rather than just one part of their lungs working for an hour or two and that's it for the whole day, they're spending maybe 1 or 2 hours on their back so their stomach can expand. Then they're spending 1 or 2 hours on their stomach so their back can expand. And I think this is one of those things that I want to show you guys how important it is to get your whole lung to really stretch out when you have any kind of lung condition. Just having the ability of your whole body to stretch is very important. So what are some things that you can do for that, right? So for example, if I'm sleeping on my stomach like this, I can put my hand behind my back. So just taking big deep breaths like this, my back is getting stretched over here. So that means my lungs are expanding up and down over here when I'm sleeping on my stomach. Okay. So this is like a good position to be in if you have difficulty breathing and you're sitting or sleeping in bed a lot. Try to like sleep on your stomach for maybe like 20, 30 minutes and then get another part. Like this is a part of your back and your lungs that really doesn't stretch that much. So that's one way you can get it to start working. Another thing you can do is like if you're sleeping on your side and you put your hand here, you take a deep breath and you can see how much this part of my lungs is expanding. You can see that. So sleeping on your side is actually getting the side that's on top to kind of expand a little more. So when people have, let's say like lung cancer on their right lobe, you want their left lobe to really do a little bit more. So doing some exercises in this position gets this part of their lungs to stretch out a little bit more. So more breathing can happen in this lung. But if you're sleeping on your right side, more breathing happens on your left lung. Okay. And same thing, if you're like on your back, you can like this is still good. Like you can still take a deep breath and try to get the front of your chest to expand as much as possible. And one thing I like doing is just putting my hand and putting a little bit of pressure so you can feel the movement. You can feel your hands coming up and down and kind of going from side to side. And again, so don't forget to do the same thing on the other side. Something as simple as this, just spending like maybe 10, 15 minutes in each position breathing, spending 10, 15 minutes in each position breathing can really help to stretch the different part of, not stretch, like it helps to really, stretching is the wrong word. It can help to really expand different parts of your lungs so your lungs can inflate a little bit better. So your right side, your front, your left side, and your back. Okay. A couple of other things that I like to do to get more of my lungs to expand are using a foam roller and then just leaning back and taking a deep breath. So this gets the bottom of my lungs a little bit more. So doing that gets this lower part of my lungs to expand a little bit more. Okay. And a couple other things that I like to do just as a way of exercising. If I put my arm on the floor like this, right? My arm muscles and my shoulder muscles are also controlling how much my upper body can expand. So by leaning like this right side of my lung is expanding a little bit more. And why does this happen? Like the main muscle that controls your breathing is your diaphragm, but then there's something called accessory muscles. So your accessory muscles are all the muscles around your neck, your shoulders, your chest, and your back. And those muscles can also help expand your rib cage. And if your rib cage expands, like your chest can expand, then your lungs inside of it can expand a little bit more. So this is something like if you're running, if you're an athlete, you will oftentimes see people recovering like this. If they're really tired, they're short of breath, then they're going to stand in this position because this position really gets their arms kind of fixated on their body. So then their chest can expand a little bit more. So this position is actually making it easier for an athlete to recover oxygen than if they stand like this. Because when my arms aren't holding onto anything, my lungs can expand a little bit, but not as much as if I'm in a recovery position. So how can you use this information? Well, there's many recovery positions that are safe and easy to do. Like if you put your hands on the floor like this, same thing. Just taking deep breaths like this is getting like everything around here to expand a little bit more. You can also do the same thing using a chair. So just kind of like leaning into a chair a little bit. So just getting into this position and just breathing while you're holding on to something. There's another very easy way to get into the recovery position. So those are some of the things that I think I want to teach you guys about the different positions that breathing is important. The other thing that's also very important is how you're breathing. So the quality and like the timing of it. Okay. So one thing that you can also do is when you're taking a deep breath, take a deep breath for let's say 2 or 3 seconds and then pause. Okay. When you're pausing, you're building a little bit of pressure in your lungs and then you have to slowly let it go out. So take a deep breath for 2 seconds, hold, and then slowly breathing out. That pause is really important because it really keeps your lungs expanded for a longer period of time because there's more pressure, more air pressure in your lungs, and then slowly releasing your air pressure little by little. There's a lot of other breathing exercises that are very common in yoga that I think for anybody dealing with COVID, it's one of the best things you can do. Like just different types of breathing techniques, and there's so many of them. So I don't want to get into which ones are good. They're all good. The ones where like you can like do a forceful breathing out, like pretending like you're trying to blow out a candle like as fast as possible. And then there's a lot of other tools, like if you had heart surgery, if you have any kind of lung surgery, they give you like the what's called a spirometer. It's like a little tube, and you breathe into it, and like the thing, like the thing goes up and down. Those spirometers are also really, really good breathing exercise devices also. Just like I like using dumbbells for my muscles and my arms. That device is really good. Those of you who know somebody that have had any kind of cardiac surgery, you know what I'm talking about. It's called a spirometer. It's like a little clear and blue tube. You blow into like a straw piece, the mouthpiece, and then there's like a dial, and it kind of goes up to like this number. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You kind of have a target, and then you can try to hold it there for like maybe 5 seconds, and then slowly let it come down. And then you can also flip it around and then practice breathing outward. But all these breathing devices techniques are very good to do, and good to practice, especially now. If you're healthy, it's the best time to practice. Like you want to have like good lungs, you want to have good flexibility in your upper body before you get sick. So when you get sick, you don't have difficulty breathing, or you have less difficulty with breathing. Okay. So all of these things, don't wait until you get some bad news and now you start exercising, you start training your breathing, you start training your body. You have to do that early on. So when you get sick, you don't get as sick. So like this is very common in orthopedic world. If you're having back surgery, knee surgery, anything, any kind of surgery, hip surgery, abdominal surgery, ankle surgery, any kind of surgery you're having, the best way to predict your recovery isn't by how skilled your doctor is, isn't by skilled how your therapist is just how strong you were before the surgery. So it doesn't matter how good I am or how good your surgeon is or how good of a patient you are, you're following all the rules. The best way to predict if you're going to recover well is if you were strong before. And that's just, in my experience, that's the same way too. The people that I recover, that I have the best outcomes with, are people that I've been able to work with before, and they're stronger, they're more flexible, they're have good balance. And then when I work with them after the surgery, they recover a lot faster. And that makes the whole process a little bit easier as well, less time consuming. People's recovery can finish like in 4 or 5 months instead of taking like maybe like 8, 9 months, like that much of a difference. And same thing with this and COVID or any breathing, lung, cardiorespiratory condition. If you had a heart attack, right, unfortunately, if you had a heart attack but you weren't active before and you didn't walk every day before, then after the heart attack your recovery isn't going to be that good. But if you were very active, very strong, very fit, had a good diet, and then unfortunately had a heart attack, it does happen. Your recovery after the heart attack is going to be much better because you're already active and healthy. And same thing with this. If your breathing is better now, then unfortunately, if you do get COVID, then when you have COVID, you'll have less of a chance of getting breathing issues. And that's, the major, I think that's the most important thing. So that's all I wanted to show you guys today. Keep it pretty open, but I want to, save a lot of time for any questions. So if you have any questions, please ask me. If I can help, anybody get any kind of clarifying information, then that's what I want to do here.
Thank you, Bhavik ji. It was very nice hearing you. Before we take questions, I have a question for you. Like, I know you are available next 18th, January 18th. January 18th, it's Martin King Luther Day. So is there any other dates you are available? If you are not, then we'll keep it on the same day. That's not a problem.
I can let you know, but I can probably do it the Monday after.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you can do it, but we don't want to discontinue. Like, if you are not available any other day, we'll keep it on the same day. You let us know, then we'll. Yeah, if any questions, if anybody has it.
Let's keep it on the topic of COVID.
Yes.
Dr. Bhavik, I have one question. This is Krishna Lal. It's a 3-part question. I hope you don't mind.
No problem.
Somebody suggested me to inhale the steam with cumin seeds in it every day, whether it's beneficial or it's not. Number 2 is senior citizen, as we are, all of us, can we go ahead and go for a vaccine, or should we wait for a couple of months, or should we take a suggestion from doctors like you or somebody else? And third part is, what's the best way to apply for vaccine through a doctor or internet?
Yeah, great questions. I'll start with the second and third part first. So you should definitely talk to your doctor about getting the vaccine, because they're also the people that would need to coordinate and schedule with you. I know New York City has some websites that you can schedule to get a vaccine, but right now that's only for healthcare workers. So for anybody that isn't a healthcare worker, you have to talk to your doctor, and then your doctor needs to figure out when's the best time to get you the vaccine. I don't think you should delay. I don't think anybody should delay. I don't think anybody should delay getting the vaccine right now. Like, the only side effects of the vaccine, they're not really side effects. It's body aches, a little bit of fever, but that's normal. That's with any vaccine you take. If you take the flu vaccine, the pneumonia vaccine, if you take like the measles, mumps, if you take hepatitis, if you take any vaccine, you're going to have a little bit of a body ache, and you're going to have a little bit of a temperature for maybe a day. So it's not really a side effect of this vaccine. That's your body's actually working to make antibodies. That's what you're feeling. So don't be scared about the side effects, because getting COVID, like, my body hurt so much, and it wasn't even like muscle pain, because I tried stretching, I tried exercising, nothing made it feel better. I just couldn't. It just was a different kind of ache. So don't worry about the side effects. And you may have side effects, but that's normal, and that's a good thing. Now, if you have any kind of food allergies, or if you have like significant allergies, you definitely need to make sure that you talk to your doctor, because there are people getting some allergic reactions. And some doctors that I've known, they have like an EpiPen, and their allergic reaction got bad that they needed to take the EpiPen just to feel better. So if you have any kind of allergies, you should talk to your doctor, but you need to talk to your doctor anyways, because they're the ones that's going to coordinate getting you the vaccine. So now the first part of your question, the steam and the cumin seeds and things like that. I don't know specifically about cumin seeds, but steam in general, it's a good thing. For anything lung related, having a little bit of moisture in your breathing, like moist heat, or I use a humidifier at home. Same concept. It just basically aerosolizes water, So when you're breathing air, the air has a little bit more humidity. So that in general is good for breathing. So steam in general, I think it's something that's, useful. It's something good to do. I don't know if adding the cumin seeds helps or not. Like that's something that's outside of my knowledge. But steaming and using a humidifier, it's definitely a good thing for your breathing.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Dr. Bhavik, this is Krish Krishnamurthy. Thank you very much. Could you just, in about 5 minutes, summarize? I missed the first 15 minutes, okay, but in any case, just the 2 or 3 lung exercises that you showed us, because I know we've got the yoga lessons that are giving us some breathing exercises. They call it pranayams, which I think is complementing. But yours looks like a little different, so maybe we can add them to what we are doing with the yoga session. So if we can just summarize in a couple of minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Number one, I think
standing up and putting your thing. The second one was obviously lying on your stomach, which I think solved a lot of problems in a lot of hospitals. And fortunately, in my case, I sleep on my stomach, so that helps.
All right, good.
Most of the night, that's what I'm doing. Then you had a couple of other things that I missed. If you can go over it, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So number one, all breathing exercises are good. So you should do anything that you're learning from yoga, definitely continue with that. But with this, I want to teach everybody that breathing in different positions is important. So breathing on your stomach is important, breathing on your back is important, and also breathing on your side. Okay. So if you try to combine different exercises and breathing in different positions, that's the best way that your lungs can expand in different directions of your body. So in 3 directions, basically. So some things that you can do is like recovery breathing. So let's say like make sure you can see properly. So if you're here, just kind of putting your hands on your knees and just taking deep breaths. So this is like 1. It's kind of like getting into a position where your hands are holding onto something.
Good. Thank you.
Another position is like if you're just on with your hands on the floor. And just breathing like that. So it's getting the different parts of your lungs to expand. This is like just for your lungs to expand. But in addition to that, like the best thing that you can do for your breathing is by walking and trying to walk a little fast. If you can walk fast and have a conversation with somebody, that's a good sign that your lungs are working really well.
Talk on the phone while you're walking.
Talk on the phone, exactly. Great time to talk to your family, talk to your, your loved ones, and it's also good exercise.
Correct. Okay, good. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to just summarize it. That's all I have. By the way, I don't know, I'm sure either Moderna or Pfizer, either one of them or the mRNA vaccines, and one is as good as the other, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's just different manufacturers, but the technology that they use to develop the vaccines are the same mRNA technology for those two. They both have both of those companies, they tested different populations. So one tested 16 and older, one tested 18 and older. Right. So there's like these different things in there. But right now, what I think is more important is whatever vaccine is available in your town or your community, just take it because it's just a safer thing to do. Just take the vaccine. But again, if you take the vaccine, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get COVID. That's not what it means.
You still have to have your,
You have a 94% less likelihood of getting COVID, but you still need to wash your hands. And the vaccine in your body, it takes time for it to work. So you have to take 2 doses for both of these vaccines.
Okay.
If you take 1 dose, it's really not that effective. It's maybe like 40-50% effective. If you take both doses, then the number jumps to like 94%.
So I think you have to wait for the immunity to build for about a couple of weeks at least.
It's
people
I think for Pfizer, I think it's 3 weeks, and for Moderna, I think it's 4 weeks, something like they have to wait.
Yeah, and then the immunity builds only about 2 weeks after the second shot, right?
Yes, it takes time. Yeah, so there's so many people right now that get the vaccine and then a week later they get tested positive. But like that doesn't mean that's not a sign that the vaccine's not working. It just hasn't had enough time to work yet.
Yes, that's important because a lot of people forget it. And this is, like that person in California who got COVID after 5 days, after the first shot. She probably had it before she took the shot.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else? Raise your hand or like.
I think
Yes, Neeta Parikji. Yes, please. Unmute कीजिए.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Bhavik. Hi. हमने चक्कर आवे एना माटे कोई थेरेपी के कोई एक्सरसाइज से?
Yeah, I mean the vertigo is
vertigo करिए छे આપણે कहिए छे ने एना माटे?
Yeah. Vertigo is not really a symptom or anything related with COVID, but vertigo, there are a lot of exercises you can do for vertigo. It depends if it is something called BPPV, which is like a really mild form of vertigo that happens based off your position of your head and your neck. If it is vertigo related to that, it's a very easy and fast solution that almost any physical therapist has experience with working. There's different positions that they can just turn your neck in slowly and give your body time for the vertigo to kind of calm down. And that's called BPPV, that type of vertigo. It's also very easy to test it. So if you have vertigo, one of the people you should see is a physical therapist, because very, very likely, I think maybe 60-70% of vertigo cases are BPPV. It's that common, and it's very fast. So you can get better in one session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you have vertigo, if you've had it for some time, if you feel like your vertigo gets worse when you look in a specific direction, then see a physical therapist, and they can
therapist. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
On that subject, I can add something. This BPPV, I think there is an exercise called Brandt Daroff exercise that probably solves the BPV problem. And any physical therapist will be able to tell you that, because I've got BPPV and I'm going through that exercise. Often.
Okay, we have Meena Agarwal ji. Please unmute yourself.
Avike Bharat?
Yeah. Dr. Bhavik, how important is to take the COVID test?
I think that's the most important thing, even more important than the vaccine, because this is like a public health measure. So what I mean by this is getting the vaccine is good for your health, but getting tested is good for everybody else's health. So by you getting tested or me getting tested, it's good for my community and my friends and my family. But me getting the vaccine, it's just good for me, right? So I think it's very important for a global pandemic, for public health issues, for the economy, that we get tested, and we get tested regularly. Getting tested once 5 months ago is not enough. If you're seeing people, if you're seeing friends, if you're seeing family, if you're going to social gatherings, if you're doing things outside, if you're working, it's very important to get tested like every 2 weeks, I would say. Get tested every 2 weeks. There's a lot of free testing out there. Your doctors can give you a test. There's like public places you can get tested also. If you are seeing anybody outside of just your home, you should get tested, just so you know and your family knows that everything is good. Because if a test comes back positive, a lot of people, the issue with COVID is that their symptoms are so mild. Their symptoms are so mild, or there's zero symptoms at all. And then they have COVID, they just don't know about it. And then they go see 100 people, and those 100 people see another 100 people, and then it spreads so much. So testing, I think, is the most important thing that anybody can do if you're seeing anybody. Now, if you're working from home and everybody in your household is only working from home, you're not going to the grocery store, you're not like, nobody's coming in or out of your home, then it's not that important. And I think, like, it's great that you're able to make that sacrifice. And I think that's a really good thing that your home is able to do. But, there's very few families that are able to do that. So for everybody else, I think it's important to get tested.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please?
So,
Unmute कीजिए. Yes, you can raise your hand or किसी को कोई question है तो please. Oh, Ila Bentala ji. Yes, unmute कीजिए please. Yes.
I have a knee problem. Plus, I have to apply for a vaccine for a apply, or I have to go to my doctor. What can we do?
For what vaccine?
Vaccine.
For the COVID vaccine?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that, if you have knee pain, that shouldn't affect your ability to get the vaccine. So like your doctor should tell you when you're earliest able to get vaccine. I know they're prioritizing people if they have other illnesses like heart disease, diabetes, cancer. If you have other medical conditions, then you're at a higher priority of getting the vaccine. Or if you're a healthcare worker or an essential worker, you're at a higher like tier, like a higher rank to get the vaccine. But having knee pain, body pain, back pain, even if you have numbness, even if you're paralyzed, doesn't matter. Like, the vaccine will not be an issue. Did that answer your question?
I think, yeah. Is there anyone? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself. I don't see any hands right now. If you have any question, please raise your hand so that I can see. Okay, I have some here. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm driving, so it may be
Yeah.
little problem. But can you get a vaccine if you had a COVID?
Good question. Very good question. Yeah, do you have a second part to the question?
And how, after the symptoms are gone, then you can take the vaccine, or how? What is the
Yeah.
protocol?
The protocol is, if you've been tested positive for COVID, you have to quarantine for a minimum of 10 and on average for 2 weeks, 10 days or 2 weeks. You have to quarantine. So for those quarantine times, you should not get the vaccine because they don't want you around other people. But it's not that you can't get the vaccine. Okay. So for, like, I have a couple friends, like one of my friends is a nurse in New York City, and she got COVID on Christmas, or like the week before Christmas. Like I think she was scheduled to get the vaccine, and then like 2 days before that she tested positive. So she just had to wait until her quarantining was over, and then she got the vaccine for the part 1. So same thing for myself. Like the earliest I would be able to get the vaccine is November 11th. I mean, sorry, not November. Wow. January 11th, because my last day of quarantining is January 10th. So as of right now, they are recommending that even if you've had COVID, you still get the vaccine if you're a healthcare worker or you're somebody that's at a high risk of bad outcomes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So even me, like, I have to talk to my doctor and schedule a date for the vaccine. Even though I have it, that doesn't mean that I can't get it again. People do get COVID multiple times, and some people's second time with COVID is better. Some people's second time with COVID is worse. So it does happen, and it's not even rare. It happens. people can get COVID multiple times.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question we can take, or like it's time? I don't see any hands. Is there any? Please raise your hands if you have any questions. Yes, yes, please unmute yourself. I see you.
Hi, doctor. Like my question was that, if you get a COVID vaccination, right? Do you get COVID after that or no? Can you prevent it? And how long you prevent?
Yeah, so some of these questions are not 100% known, but they're like, very high in the 90s known. So if you get the COVID vaccine and you get both doses of the vaccine, and then for like, they studied this on like over 70,000 people, 70,000 participants. The people that were in the vaccine group, 94% of them, they had 94% less chance of getting COVID compared to the group that did not get the vaccine. So out of a study of, let's say, like 70,000 people, they gave the vaccine to half of them and they gave a placebo to the other half. Okay. And what they did is they studied them for, let's say, like 6 months or a year, right? So for 6 months, they're following these people, and they found that, let's say, 600 people got out of the 70,000, 600 people got COVID, right? And once they see 600 people got COVID, then they see how many of these people had the vaccine and how many didn't have the vaccine. So what they found out of some of these are like arbitrary numbers. Out of the 600 people, I think it was like 580 of them had the placebo, and just 20 of them had the vaccine. So it's a big difference. You can definitely still get COVID, but it's a really low chance compared to if you don't have the vaccine. So just to show you how much of a difference it was. Like the Moderna vaccine, they looked at, I think, like in their whole study, the Moderna vaccine had 35,000 people. I think 130 of them got COVID, and only 12 of them had the vaccine. Something like that. So it's like a really small chance.
Chances. All right. Thank you so much.
You still have a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. But you still have a chance, right?
You have a chance. So the most important thing you can do is wash your hands, wear a mask. Just limit how much exposure you're doing with people that are like, for right now, that's not a good idea to see not to hang out with any doctors, nurses, physical therapists. Don't party with us. Don't have fun with us. Just let us do our jobs. So then then everybody can just be safer.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think one of the things you should emphasize, Dr. Bhavik, is you still have a 5% chance of getting COVID after the 2 shots. So one has to be careful and follow, as Dr. Fauci says, follow all the, hand washing and wearing masks and, social distancing for quite a while, till maybe 70–80% of the population gets vaccinated. So you get the full immunity.
Exactly. And that process, it's going to take time. So like, let's say, even if you get vaccinated this month, the rest of the country won't get the vaccine until probably the end of the year or maybe next year. So it's going to take a long time, because imagine like how long it takes to administer 300 million doses.
Yeah.
It takes time. Times 2, because everybody has to get it twice. So like 600 million doses need to get administered. So it takes time, but we've been patient this long. Let's continue it a little bit more. Just wash your hands and wear a mask, and that's gonna basically help everybody, all of your neighbors. It's gonna help, and that's the important thing. We need to now start thinking about what's best for our neighbors rather than our health. What's best for my neighbor's health, and I think we need to start thinking about things like that.
Thank you so much, Bhavik.
Thank you so much.
Your time. Definitely we will catch you up. Let us know whether you can make it 18th or the next Monday. We'll schedule you on that day. Thank you so much for all the help you give it to us, and see you all guys tomorrow 9 o'clock.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.